The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it had for the past 15 years, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold that reminded the settlers of home but felt uniquely their own now. Sophie Carter pressed her nose against the kitchen window and watched the field stretch out toward the horizon. Each row of crops, a testament to human determination and hope on this frontier world they called. Meridian 7. Breakfast is ready. Sweetheart, Lauren Carter called from behind her, setting down plates of synthetic eggs and fresh vegetables grown right here in their settlement. The 8-year-old girl turned with a bright smile that could light up the darkest corners of space. Mom, can I take my project to school today? Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. I finished the drawings of all the different species that visit our colony. Benjamin Carter walked into the kitchen, still wiping dirt from his hands after checking the morning irrigation systems. He was a tall man with kind eyes who had left Earth's crowded cities for a chance to build something meaningful among the stars. Let me see this famous project, he said. Ruffling his daughter's dark hair, Sophie ran to grab her datapad and showed them page after page of careful drawings. The insectoid vril traders with their chittering language, the peaceful Norvan diplomats who resembled walking flowers, even the rare Crithian visitors who towered over humans with their scaled skin and sharp features. Beside each drawing, she had written notes about their cultures, their foods, what made them laugh. This is beautiful work, Lauren said softly, her voice thick with pride. She was a medical researcher who had spent years studying how different species could live together safely, and seeing her daughter embrace that same curiosity filled her heart with joy. The teacher will love it. What none of them knew as they shared that simple breakfast was that their peaceful morning would be one of the last. High above their colony, far beyond the reach of their basic sensor arrays, a Crithian battle fleet had just emerged from hyperspace with Commander Vexler at its helm. The commander stood on his ship's bridge, his reptilian features twisted in what his species considered a smile. To him, Meridian 7 was nothing more than a minor obstacle, a small human settlement that had the misfortune of existing in territory the Crithian Empire now claimed. Scan the surface, he ordered his tactical officer. I want to know exactly how many humans we're dealing with. Approximately 12,000. Commander, the officer reported after a moment. Minimal defensive capabilities, mostly agricultural infrastructure. Vexler nodded slowly. He had studied humans during his military training and found them puzzling creatures who seemed to prefer farming and building to conquest. They had spread across numerous worlds in the past century, always asking permission, always offering to share, always backing down when challenged. Weakness, he thought, pure weakness dressed up as civility down on the surface. The first warnings began to flash across the colony's communication systems. Christopher Hayes, the human ambassador assigned to this sector, received the priority message first and felt his blood run cold. Get me the colony administrator, he said quickly to his aide. We have a situation. Within an hour, every adult in New Haven knew that Crithian warships orbited their world. The Empire's message was simple and brutal. Evacuate within 24 hours or be removed by force. They claimed an ancient territorial dispute gave them rights to this system, though no such dispute had existed until this very moment. Benjamin Carter stood in the town square with hundreds of other colonists, listening as Administrator Patricia Morgan tried to explain their options. We can fight, she said, though everyone could hear the uncertainty in her voice. We have some defensive weapons, enough to make them think twice. Or we can leave, someone else called out. To pack what we can and find another world. They're testing us, Christopher Hayes said, stepping forward. The ambassador was a seasoned diplomat who had negotiated with dozens of species, but he had never seen such naked aggression. The Crithians want to see if humans will stand up for themselves or just roll over. But what about the children? Lauren Carter asked, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. We built this place for them, for their future. The debate raged for hours while Sophie and the other children watched from the school building, not fully understanding but sensing the fear in their parents' voices. Finally, the adults made their choice. They would try diplomacy first, offer to share the planet or negotiate a peaceful transition. But they would also begin evacuation procedures just in case. That evening, Sophie found her father sitting alone on their porch, staring up at the stars where enemy ships lurked invisible against the black. "Dad, are we leaving?" she asked quietly. Benjamin pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her small shoulders. "Maybe, sweetheart," he admitted. "But wherever we go, we'll be together. I made friends here," Sophie said. "Human friends and alien friends too. Doesn't that matter to them?" "It should," Benjamin replied, his voice rough with emotion. "It should matter to everyone." The next morning brought an unexpected turn. A small Crithian shuttle had crashed in the hills outside New Haven during the night, its pilot injured and stranded. Sophie was with a group of children on a nature walk when they found him. A young soldier named Kresh, who looked terrifying with his scales and claws, but groaned in pain just like anyone else would. "We should help him," Sophie said immediately while the other children hung back nervously. "He's hurt, but he's one of them," another child protested. "They want to kick us off our planet." Sophie knelt beside the injured soldier anyway, offering him water from her canteen. "My mom's a doctor," she said gently. "We can help you." Kresh stared at this tiny human child with confusion and something else he couldn't quite name. In all his training, no one had prepared him for kindness from those marked as obstacles. "Why?" he managed to ask in broken English. "Why help enemy?" "Because you're hurt," Sophie answered simply, as if the question made no sense. "And hurting people need help. That's what my parents taught me." The children helped Kresh back to the colony where Lauren Carter treated his injuries despite the protests of some colonists. Commander Vexler received his soldier back within hours, along with a message from the humans. "We don't want war. We want to talk. Please give us a chance." But when Kresh reported what happened, describing the human child who showed him mercy, Vexler only sneered. "They're even weaker than I thought," he told his officers. "A people who help their enemies don't deserve to hold territory." We moved forward with the evacuation deadline. That night, Sophie added one more drawing to her project, a picture of Kresh, the Crithian soldier, with a note that read, "Even enemies can be friends if we try." She showed it to her parents, who hugged her tightly and tried not to let her see their tears. The deadline was 12 hours away now, and the transports were loading families and belongings. New Haven Colony prepared to abandon everything they had built, choosing retreat over bloodshed. What none of them knew was that one small act of kindness would not save them, and that the Crithian Empire was about to make the worst mistake in its long and brutal history high above. Commander Vexler watched the evacuation begin and smiled his predator smile. He had won without firing a shot, proving once again that humans were no threat to the mighty Crithian Empire. Tomorrow this world would belong to his people, and these weak settlers would be scattered to whatever corner of space would take them. Sophie Carter fell asleep that night clutching her datapad, dreaming of a future where all her friends could stay together, where humans and aliens lived side by side in peace. She never imagined that within 24 hours, her small life would end, and an ending would change the course of galactic history forever. The evacuation transports sat like metal giants on the landing fields of New Haven, their cargo bays slowly filling with the accumulated dreams of 15 years. Families moved through their homes one last time, choosing what memories they could carry and what they would leave behind. The deadline was now just 8 hours away, and every human on Meridian 7 knew that compliance was their only choice against the overwhelming force that orbited above them. Benjamin Carter, helped his wife load medical equipment onto Transport 7, each sealed container representing years of research into cross-species medicine. Lauren worked with mechanical efficiency, her face carefully blank, refusing to show the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. "Where's Sophie?" she asked suddenly, looking around the busy landing field. "She said she needed to grab something from the school," Benjamin replied, checking his datapad. "I told her to be quick. We launch in 6 hours. She shouldn't be alone right now," Lauren said, worry creeping into her voice. "Not with those ships up there watching everything we do." Benjamin squeezed her hand. "She's with Lieutenant Nicole Bennett and 2 security officers. I wouldn't let her go without protection." What Benjamin didn't know was that Commander Vexler had been watching the evacuation with growing irritation. His tactical officers reported that the humans were complying, loading their transports and preparing to leave, but something about their orderly withdrawal bothered him. "They're too calm," he told his second-in-command. "Where is the panic? Where is the fear?" "Perhaps they truly are as weak as we believed, Commander," the officer suggested. "They accept defeat without struggle. Or perhaps they're planning something," Vexler growled. "Send down more surveillance drones. I want to see every move they make." Sophie Carter walked through the empty hallways of New Haven Primary School, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The building that had been full of laughter just yesterday now felt like a tomb. She had come back for her project datapad, the one with all her drawings and notes about friendship between species. It seemed more important than ever now. Proof that what they had built here mattered. Found it. She called out to Lieutenant Bennett, who waited by the entrance with 2 armed guards. "It was in my desk the whole time." Nicole Bennett was a young officer who had joined the Colonial Defense Force to protect settlers, not to oversee retreats. She smiled at Sophie despite her own heavy heart. "Good. Now, let's get you back to your parents before they worry." The small group stepped out into the morning sunlight, crossing the empty schoolyard toward their waiting vehicle. High above, a Crithian surveillance drone marked their movement and transmitted it back to the command ship. On the bridge, a junior officer saw 4 figures leaving a building and made a fatal assumption. "Commander, we have movement in the settlement," he reported. 4 humans returning to an evacuated structure. Vexler turned sharply. "What?" "I ordered complete evacuation. They appear to be armed." "Sir," the officer added, zooming in on Lieutenant Bennett's sidearm. "Could be a sabotage team." The commander's eyes narrowed. He had been waiting for humans to show their true nature, to reveal whatever treachery they planned. "Send a message to all colonists," he ordered. "Anyone who returns to the settlement will be considered hostile. We will make an example." "Sir, they're already heading back toward the transports," another officer pointed out. "Should we simply monitor?" "No," Vexler snapped. "These humans need to learn that defiance has consequences. Target those 4 figures and fire." The weapons officer hesitated for just a moment. "Commander, our sensors indicate one of them is very small, possibly a child. Did I ask for sensor analysis?" Vexler roared. "I gave you an order. Fire now." The energy beam that lanced down from orbit was invisible until it struck. It hit the schoolyard with devastating precision, turning sand and stone into glass and ash in an instant. Sophie Carter died before she could even process what was happening. Her small body vaporized along with Lieutenant Bennett and both security officers. The blast was visible from the landing fields, a pillar of fire that rose into the sky like an accusation. Benjamin Carter saw it and knew, some deep instinct telling him exactly what that explosion meant. He started running before his conscious mind caught up, running toward the school while others tried to hold him back. "Sophie!" he screamed. "Sophie, no, no, no." Lauren Carter collapsed where she stood, a sound tearing from her throat that was beyond words, beyond language, pure anguish given voice. Other colonists surrounded her, but no one knew what to say. What comfort could possibly exist for this Captain Andrew Morrison? The colony's defense coordinator had cameras throughout the settlement. He had seen everything from his command center. 4 people walking peacefully, then nothing but fire and death. His hand shook as he activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is Captain Morrison to all transports," he said, his voice barely controlled. "The Crithians have just murdered Lieutenant Bennett, Officers Grant and Palmer, and Sophie Carter, an 8-year-old child. They were unarmed, they were complying with evacuation, and they were murdered anyway." He pressed another button, one that activated a secure channel that reached beyond Meridian 7. Beyond this system, all the way to Earth and every human colony in known space. The same footage that showed 4 people walking, then dying, began broadcasting on every human network before the Crithians could jam the signal on the command ship. Vexler received confirmation that the targets had been eliminated. "Excellent," he said, satisfied. "Now the other humans will understand we mean business. Prepare a message for the colonists. Any further delays in evacuation will result in additional strikes." "Commander," his tactical officer said nervously, "our intelligence suggests one of those we killed was a juvenile human. So?" Vexler shrugged. "They shouldn't have been in the settlement. This is war. Casualties are expected." "But sir, we're not at war," the officer protested weakly. "This was a peacekeeping operation. We are always at war," the commander replied coldly. "That's what these soft species never understand. There are only the strong and the conquered. Nothing else matters." Down on the surface, Benjamin Carter reached the schoolyard to find only scorched earth and ash. He fell to his knees in the still-hot crater where his daughter had died, his mind unable to accept what his eyes could see. Other colonists arrived behind him, armed now, the evacuation forgotten. "They killed a child," someone whispered. "They murdered a little girl for walking across a schoolyard." Lauren Carter arrived, held up by friends, and joined her husband in the crater. They clung to each other among the ashes of their only child, while around them the mood shifted from grief to something harder, something cold and sharp. Administrator Patricia Morgan made her way through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "The transports are staying," she announced. "No one is leaving. We won't run from this." Captain Morrison joined them, his jaw set with grim determination. "I've sent the footage to Earth Command and every colony in human space," he said. "Everyone will know what happened here. Everyone will see what the Empire did." The transmission reached Earth within hours thanks to quantum relay stations. It played on every screen, in every city, on every human world. President Michelle Warren watched it in her office. Watched a child die for the crime of retrieving her school project, and felt something break inside her. Some final restraint that had kept humanity's darker nature in check. She activated the Emergency Council and spoke just 3 words that would echo through history. "Mobilize the fleet across human space." The reaction was instant and universal. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Factories retooled to war production. Secret military installations that had remained hidden for decades began to wake from their long sleep. Humanity had always known that one day they might have to fight, and they had prepared for that day even while pursuing peace on Meridian 7. Benjamin Carter stood in the ashes of his daughter and made a decision. "I'm enlisting," he told his wife. "I'm going to make them pay for what they did." Lauren nodded. Her own tears dried now, replaced by an expression of iron resolve. "I'll volunteer for medical service," she said. "Someone has to patch up our soldiers so they can keep fighting." High Inquisitor Zarkoth, Supreme Commander of the Crithian Invasion Fleet, received Commander Vexler's report about the incident on Meridian 7. "It killed a juvenile?" he asked with mild interest. "Yes, High Inquisitor," Vexler confirmed, along with 3 armed escorts. The colonists needed to understand that defiance would not be tolerated. And how have the humans responded? Zarkoth inquired. They've stopped evacuating, Vexler admitted. But that's expected. Once we demonstrate our overwhelming force again, they'll break. Probably, the High Inquisitor agreed. Still, keep monitoring their communications. Humans are unpredictable when emotional. What neither of them understood was that humanity had just crossed a line from which there was no return. The death of Sophie Carter had awakened something that the galaxy had never seen, something that Earth's violent history had forged over millions of years of survival. The Crithian Empire had killed a human child and thought it would inspire fear. But they had instead inspired something far more dangerous. They had inspired purpose in the crater on Meridian 7. Someone placed a small marker where Sophie died. Others. The footage of Sophie Carter's death reached Earth Command at 0300 hours, transmitted through channels that couldn't be jammed or intercepted. Admiral Daniel Frost was pulled from his sleep to watch an 8-year-old girl walk across a schoolyard and die in fire from the sky. He watched it 3 times without speaking, then reached for his secure communication panel. "Wake everyone," he ordered his aide. "I want the Joint Chiefs, the President, and every fleet commander in this building within the hour." President Michelle Warren arrived at the Pentagon still wearing her nightclothes beneath a hastily thrown-on coat. She had already seen the video, had already cried her private tears, and now wore the face of a leader who must make impossible choices. "How many ships can we mobilize?" she asked without preamble. "That depends on what we're mobilizing for, Madam President," General Brandon Cole replied carefully. He commanded the Colonial Marines, men and women who signed up to protect human interests. But this felt different from any previous deployment. For war, Warren said simply. Total war against the Crithian Empire. The room fell silent. Humanity had fought pirates and dealt with border skirmishes, but never declared war on a major galactic power. "The Galactic Council will condemn us," someone pointed out. "They'll say we're overreacting. The one death doesn't justify." One death? Warren's voice was soft but deadly. They murdered a child who was helping them, who showed their wounded soldier mercy, who represented everything good about what we're trying to build out here. If we let that stand, we tell every species in the galaxy that human lives are worthless. Admiral Frost pulled up tactical displays. "We have 47 warships currently active," he said. "Another 100 in various stages of construction or refit. What about the reserve fleet?" The president asked, and every person in the room stiffened. The reserve fleet was Earth's secret, a contingency plan that had been funded quietly for decades. "Madam President," Frost said slowly, "if we activate the reserve fleet, everyone will know we've been preparing for this. Our entire narrative about peaceful expansion will be questioned." "Let them question," Warren replied. "Our children are not acceptable casualties. Activate everything we have." Within hours, the orders went out through encrypted channels. In hidden shipyards beyond Neptune's orbit, massive vessels that had never seen combat began receiving crew assignments. In the asteroid belt, weapons platforms that officially didn't exist started charging their systems. On Mars, underground factories switched to full production of munitions and supplies. Eric Patterson had been director of human military research for 12 years, quietly developing technologies that other species had abandoned as too dangerous or too costly. Now he stood before the President and Joint Chiefs, presenting weapons that made even hardened warriors uncomfortable. "This is the Hellfire missile system," he explained, showing designs for ordnance that burned hot enough to melt through ship hulls. The Norvan species developed the prototype, but abandoned it because the heat killed their own crews. "We've solved that problem with improved shielding. And this?" General Cole asked, pointing to another schematic. "Kinetic penetrators," Patterson said. "Simple concept. accelerate a dense projectile to a significant fraction of light speed. The Vril called them barbaric because they can't be precisely controlled. We call them effective. Show me everything, Admiral Frost commanded. I don't care how dangerous or expensive. I want every option on the table. The civilian response was just as swift and unanimous. Recruitment centers across Earth and every human colony were overwhelmed with volunteers. People who had never considered military service stood in lines for hours to enlist. Benjamin Carter arrived at the New Haven recruitment station with hundreds of others. Colonists who had been farmers and teachers and shopkeepers just days ago. I'm 43, he told the recruiting sergeant. Too old for combat service? The sergeant, a woman named Melissa Turner, who had witnessed Sophie's death through her monitoring station, looked at him with understanding. We're accepting volunteers up to age 50 for combat roles, she said. But I have to ask, are you doing this for the right reasons? My daughter is dead, Benjamin said flatly. The people who killed her think they'll face no consequences. I'm going to prove them wrong. Are those the right reasons? Turner processed his application without another word. By the end of the day, Benjamin Carter was Private Carter in the Colonial Marines, assigned to a fast-track training program. His wife Lauren enlisted in medical service. Her expertise in alien physiology, suddenly crucial for a military that would be fighting non-human enemies. Ambassador Christopher Hayes stood before the Galactic Council 3 days after Sophie's death, his face carved from stone. The council chambers were designed to intimidate. A vast circular room where representatives of 40 different species sat in judgment, but Hayes felt no intimidation, only cold purpose. The human delegation wishes to make a formal statement, the council speaker announced. A floating jellyfish-like creature named Ulvex. The United Earth government has declared war on the Crithian Empire, Hayes said simply, and the chamber erupted in shocked murmurs and translated exclamations. Ambassador, please. Ulvex bubbled. War is such an extreme response. Surely negotiation, compensation, even criminal prosecution of the individual commander would be more appropriate. Commander Vex Lar murdered a child under orders from his superiors, Hayes replied. The Empire has issued no apology, no offer of justice, nothing but silence. They believe they can kill humans without consequence. We're here to correct that misunderstanding. A Crithian representative, not part of the military but a civilian diplomat, rose to speak. The human colony was in disputed territory, he argued. Casualties in such situations are regrettable, but sometimes unavoidable. Sophie Carter was 8 years old, Hayes said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. She was retrieving her school project, a collection of drawings about friendship between species. She was escorted by armed adults, yes, but she herself posed no threat. Your military fired from orbit without warning, without communication, without mercy. He activated a holographic display showing the footage that every human had now seen. The council members watched in uncomfortable silence as a small figure walked across a schoolyard and disappeared in fire. Several species whose biology allowed for such reactions visibly recoiled. This is what your empire considers acceptable peacekeeping, Hayes continued. This is the price they demanded for their territorial claim. Well, humanity has a price too, and we're here to collect. What are you saying? Ulvex asked nervously. I'm saying that in 72 hours, the first human battle fleets will enter Crithian space, Hayes replied. We will not stop until the Empire's military capacity is destroyed, and those responsible for this atrocity face justice. The Council may condemn our actions if it wishes. But understand this, we would rather be condemned than allow our children to be murdered. Without response, he left the chambers to chaos. Representatives from 40 species, all talking at once. The Crithian diplomat tried to laugh off the threat, explaining that humans had never shown serious military capability, but others, weren't so sure. Several species had studied Earth's violent history and wondered what a planet that had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts might produce when truly motivated high. Inquisitor Zarkoth received the Council's warning about human mobilization and dismissed it entirely. They have fewer than 50 warships, he told his staff. We have 700 in this sector alone. This is posturing, nothing more. But sir, one of his intelligence officers ventured. Our sources suggest they're activating reserve forces. Let them, Zarkoth laughed. Even if they double their fleet, they're still hopelessly outnumbered. We'll crush whatever they send and make an example of Earth itself if necessary. What the Empire's intelligence services failed to detect were the hundreds of ships emerging from hidden facilities. The weapons platforms going active in deep space. The massive mobilization of human resources across dozens of colonies. Humanity had learned from watching other species fight. They knew what worked, what didn't, and what gaps existed in current military doctrine. Admiral Frost stood on the bridge of his flagship, the newly commissioned battleship Retribution, and reviewed the battle plans one final time. We hit them everywhere at once, he told his senior staff. 17 systems, coordinated strikes, maximum chaos. Admiral, that spreads us thin, Captain Kevin Martinez warned. He commanded the Retribution and had fought in the border conflicts. The closest humans had come to real war. It's supposed to, Frost replied. The Empire expects us to mass our forces and hit 1 or 2 targets. They'll position their fleet to defend critical systems. By attacking everywhere, we force them to spread out too. And in small engagements, our tech advantage matters more than their numbers. Our tech advantage? Martinez sounded skeptical. Sir, the Crithians have been in space for 5,000 years, and they've been comfortable for most of that time, Frost countered. When was the last time they faced an enemy that actually scared them? They fight with doctrine written centuries ago. We fight with everything we've learned from watching them. The final piece of humanity's mobilization was the message President Warren broadcast to every human world. The 72-hour deadline expired at exactly 1200 hours Galactic Standard Time, and humanity struck with precision that stunned military observers across known space. Human fleets emerged from hyperspace simultaneously across 17 Crithian-controlled systems, each task force commanded by officers who had spent careers studying alien warfare and now put that knowledge to devastating use. Admiral Daniel Frost stood on the bridge of the Retribution as they dropped into normal space above the Crithian industrial world of Vex Prime. Status report, he commanded calmly, though his heart pounded with adrenaline. Enemy fleet detecting us now, sir, the tactical officer reported. 16 capital ships, 42 escorts, standard defensive formation. They outnumber us 3-1, Captain Kevin Martinez observed. Exactly as predicted. And they're about to learn that numbers aren't everything, Frost replied. Launch kinetic penetrators, maximum velocity. Target their command ship, the Crithian commander on Vex. Prime was a veteran named Tholkar, who had fought in dozens of campaigns against various species. He watched the human ships approach and felt confident despite their fearsome reputation. 16 human vessels against his superior force seemed like suicide. All ships, standard engagement pattern, he ordered. Let's show these upstarts what real military power looks like. Then the kinetic rounds hit his flagship at a significant fraction of light speed. And Tholkar learned that human weaponry followed very different rules than what he expected. The projectiles punched through his shields like they weren't there, through armor plating designed to stop energy weapons, through 3 decks of his ship before the kinetic energy converted to heat, and turned his vessel's interior into an inferno of evasive maneuvers. He screamed as his bridge filled with smoke. Return fire, all batteries. But the human ships weren't where his tactical computers predicted they would be. They moved with almost random precision, using thrust patterns that violated standard efficiency protocols, but made them impossible to target accurately. Krithian energy beams carved through space where human vessels had been moments before. Hitting nothing but Vacuum Lieutenant Amanda Phillips coordinated the Retribution's defensive systems, her fingers dancing across haptic controls as she redirected power to different shield sections. She had graduated top of her class in tactical operations and now put that training to the test. "Enemy targeting our port side," she announced. Rotating ship to distribute shield load. The battle above Vex Prime lasted only 40 minutes before the Krithian defensive fleet broke and scattered. Thulkar's flagship drifted dead in space, its crew evacuated. Of his 16 capital ships, 9 were destroyed or disabled, the rest fleeing to hyperspace. The human task force had lost 2 escort vessels, their crews dying but taking Krithian ships with them across 16 other systems. Similar stories played out. Human forces struck hard and withdrew before Krithian reinforcements could arrive. Each battle lasted less than an hour. Each ended with damaged Imperial infrastructure and stunned defenders. The galaxy watched through intelligence networks and felt a collective shock at what they were witnessing on the 4th day of the war. Sergeant Benjamin Carter saw combat for the first time. His unit, part of the Colonial Marine Expeditionary Force, landed on Meridian 7 to retake the colony from Krithian occupation. He had trained for 6 weeks instead of the usual 6 months. Crash course instruction in weapons, tactics, and how to kill enemies who were bigger and stronger, but not necessarily smarter. "Remember," his squad leader said as their dropship descended, "Krithians rely on physical intimidation. They're used to enemies breaking when they roar and charge. We don't break. We aim center mass and we fire until the threat stops moving." The landing zone was hot. Krithian troops already firing at the incoming ships. Benjamin felt the vessel shake as energy weapons scored hits against their armor, but the pilots kept them steady. Then the hatch opened, and he was running across scarred earth toward cover, his rifle barking in his hands almost on instinct. Krithian soldier emerged from a bunker, towering over the humans. Scales gleaming like armor, claws extended. The creature roared, a sound designed by evolution to paralyze prey. Benjamin shot him 4 times in the chest without hesitation, and the soldier went down hard. "They bleed like anything else," another Marine said. Almost surprised. "Of course they do," Benjamin replied grimly, advancing toward the school where his daughter had died. "Everything bleeds." The battle for New Haven lasted 3 days of brutal close-quarters fighting. Krithians discovered that human small unit tactics were incredibly effective, that human soldiers moved through buildings like they were born to urban warfare. Commander Vexler himself was on planet, having returned to oversee the occupation, and now found his forces slowly being overwhelmed by enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical staff. "They're smaller, weaker. They should be easy to defeat. They don't fight like any species we've encountered," an officer explained. "They use terrain, concealment, deception. They strike and fade. They accept casualties that would break other species and keep attacking." On the 5th day, human forces reached the school. Benjamin Carter was in the first squad through the door, clearing rooms where his daughter had learned and played. They found Krithian soldiers using the building as a command post and showed them no mercy. By the time the school was secured, 20 enemy bodies lay in hallways that had once echoed with children's laughter. Benjamin knelt in the crater where Sophie died, now filled with Krithian fortifications. His squad gave him a moment of privacy. "I'm here, sweetheart," he whispered to the scorched earth. "Dad's here, and we're taking our home back." High Inquisitor Zarkoth watched his empire's military crumble with growing disbelief. In 2 weeks, humans had destroyed or damaged over 200 Krithian vessels. We're taking 11 systems and showed no signs of slowing. This is impossible, he insisted at a command meeting. Their fleet is tiny compared to ours. Was tiny, his chief strategist corrected nervously. Intelligence now suggests they've been hiding their true military capacity. We're detecting construction facilities we never knew existed. Weapons platforms that appear to have been dormant for years. Then activate more fleets, Zarkoth ordered. Pull ships from the core worlds, from garrison duty, I don't care. Mass our forces and crush them. High Inquisitor, another officer said carefully. Perhaps we should consider negotiation? The Galactic Council is offering to mediate. We negotiate from a position of strength, never weakness, Zarkoth snapped. These humans must be taught their place, but humanity had other plans. Admiral Frost launched Operation Broken Star, a campaign targeting not just military assets, but the infrastructure that supported the Crithian war machine. Human ships struck shipyards, supply depots, communication relays. Dr. Samantha Wright, a weapons specialist deployed with the fleet, introduced electromagnetic pulse devices that disabled entire orbital platforms without killing their crews. We're not monsters, she explained when someone questioned why they didn't just destroy everything. We're teaching them a lesson, not committing genocide. The turning point came when Crithian leadership made their most catastrophic mistake. Frustrated by human success and desperate to force a surrender, they executed 50 human prisoners of war, broadcasting the executions as a warning. The message was clear. Surrender or watch your people die. Humanity's response was swift and absolute. President Warren appeared on every screen in human space, her face a mask of cold fury. The Crithian Empire has executed prisoners of war in violation of every rule of civilized conflict, she announced. From this moment, we no longer accept their surrender. We will not stop until their military capacity is completely destroyed. We will not rest until every person responsible for this war crimes faces justice. The gloves came off. Human forces that had been showing restraint now fought with terrifying efficiency. Admiral Frost authorized weapons that had been held in reserve. Technologies too dangerous for limited war, but acceptable now. Hellfire missiles turned Crithian ships into expanding spheres of superheated plasma. Fusion mines made entire orbital approaches into death zones. And human marines stopped taking prisoners who might be executed anyway. General Brandon Cole led the assault on the Crithian fortress world of Krathna, a planet that had never fallen to any enemy in 5,000 years of warfare. He brought 30,000 Marines, 200 tanks, and orbital support from a dozen warships. We're going to take that world in 7 days, he told his commanders. Not because we have to, but because we want them to know we can. The battle for Krathna was brutal beyond measure. Crithian defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that losing their fortress world would shatter their empire's aura of invincibility. Human forces pushed forward through minefields and ambushes, taking casualties, but never breaking. Captain Tyler Morgan's company fought for 48 hours straight to secure a strategic bridge. And when reinforcements finally arrived, they found Morgan and his survivors still holding their position on the 6th day. Human forces breached the planetary capital's defenses. General Cole personally led the final assault on the command citadel where Crithian generals had planned conquests for centuries. The human fleet arrived at the Crithian homeworld of Krith on the 43rd day of the war, their ships forming a blockade that stretched across the entire orbital zone. Admiral Daniel Frost stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked down at the planet where billions of civilians watched the sky with fear, wondering if human retribution would extend to them. We could end them, Captain Kevin Martinez said quietly. One bombardment and the Empire truly ceases to exist. We could, Frost agreed. But we won't. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to ensure this never happens again. President Michelle Warren's face appeared on every screen across Krith, broadcast through channels the Empire couldn't block. The Krithian civilians had been told by their military the humans were savage monsters who would show no mercy. But the woman they saw looked tired and sad rather than vengeful. "People of Krith," she began, "your military leadership killed a human child named Sophie Carter. They did this without warning, without cause, during a peaceful evacuation. When we demanded justice, they refused. When we went to war, they escalated. And now your empire has fallen." She paused, letting that reality sink in. "But you are not your government. You are not responsible for the crimes committed in your name. We are offering your civilian leadership a chance to surrender, to reorganize under Galactic Council supervision, to rebuild without the military caste that has ruled you for so long." The broadcast showed images of Sophie, her drawings, her school project about friendship between species. Krithian civilians who had been raised to see other species as inferior watched a child who had shown mercy to their wounded soldier, and many wept. "This is what your military destroyed," Warren continued. "Not a threat, not a soldier, just a little girl who believed in peace. We are taking your leaders to trial, and they will face justice. But we will not destroy you. That's the difference between humanity and the empire you served." Within hours, riots broke out across Krith as civilians demanded their military leaders surrender. High Inquisitor Zarkoth watched his own people turn against him and finally understood that he had lost more. He had lost the moral authority to rule. When human Marines arrived to take him into custody, led by General Brandon Cole himself, Zarkoth went quietly. "I underestimated you," he said simply as they placed restraints on his wrists. "I thought your kindness was weakness." "It was kindness," Cole replied, "until you proved you didn't deserve it." Commander Vexler was captured on Meridian 7, found hiding in the ruins of the school where Sophie had died. Captain Tyler Morgan's company had the honor of taking him prisoner, and they did so without violence despite the rage many of them felt. "You don't get to die fighting," Morgan told the Krithian officer. "You get to face trial and spend the rest of your life remembering what you did." The trial was held on neutral ground at the Galactic Council chambers. Broadcast lived to every species in known space. The proceedings lasted 3 weeks as prosecutors presented evidence of war crimes, civilian casualties, and the initial murder that sparked the conflict. Krithian military leaders sat in the defendant's box and watched. Footage of their own atrocities played back for all to see. Benjamin Carter testified on the 17th day, wearing his colonial marine uniform with sergeant's stripes. He stood before the court and spoke about his daughter with a steady voice, though tears ran down his face. "Sophie was 8 years old," he said. "She loved drawing. She loved learning about different species. She helped an injured Krithian soldier because she believed in showing mercy." He looked directly at Commander Vexler. "You killed her for walking across a schoolyard. You killed her because you could, because you thought human lives didn't matter. I want you to spend every day for the rest of your life knowing that one child's death brought down an empire." Lauren Carter testified next, and her words carried a different kind of weight. "I'm a medical researcher," she explained. "I've spent my career studying how different species can live together safely. My daughter believed in that same dream, and your empire murdered her for it." She pulled out Sophie's datapad, the one that had survived the blast, and showed the court the drawings of different species with notes about their cultures. "This is what you destroyed," she said. "Not just a life, but hope for a better future. I'm here to make sure everyone knows what that cost." The defense attorneys, provided by the Galactic Council to ensure fairness, argued that the commanders had been following standard military doctrine, that the deaths were unfortunate but not criminal. The prosecution demolished that argument by showing similar situations from Krithian history where they had shown restraint when the target species was considered. Powerful enough to fight back. You didn't show restraint with humans because you thought we were weak, the human prosecutor argued. You thought you could kill a child and face no consequences. You were wrong, and that's why you're here. The verdict came after 3 weeks of testimony, guilty on all counts for both Zarkoth and Vexler, along with 43 other officers involved in the decision chain. The sentence was life imprisonment rather than execution, a choice that surprised many species, but reflected humanity's desire for justice over revenge. Lauren Carter had requested to address the court after sentencing. She stood before the assembled representatives of 40 species and spoke with quiet strength. My daughter would have wanted mercy, she said. She would have asked us to remember that even enemies are people. So I stand here today and say that these leaders deserve to live with what they've done. Death would be too easy for them. She looked at the Crithian defendants. You will spend your lives knowing that you destroyed an empire because you couldn't show a child the basic respect all living things deserve. That's a worse punishment than anything we could inflict. The Crithian Empire was formally dissolved, its territory placed under temporary Galactic Council administration while civilian governments reorganized. The military caste that had ruled for millennia was banned from holding power. Hundreds of military officers faced trials, though most received lighter sentences than the top leadership. Ambassador Christopher Hayes proposed a new framework for galactic relations, one that would be named the Sophie Carter Memorial Accord. It established clear rules about civilian protection during conflicts, banned orbital bombardment of populated areas without warning, and created war crimes tribunals with real authority. Every species on the Galactic Council signed it, with the new Crithian civilian government being the very first signatory. Let this stand as proof, Councillor Rebecca Stone said during the signing ceremony, that humanity will fight when necessary, but we prefer peace. That we will show mercy when possible, but demand justice when innocents are harmed. That we are not conquerors, but we are not victims either. The war had lasted 47 days and resulted in nearly 200,000 deaths across both sides. Humanity lost 36 ships and over 40,000 personnel. The Crithian military lost 300 ships and twice as many lives. But the political and social changes would reshape the galaxy for generations. Other species that had considered testing human resolve reconsidered their plans. The major powers invited human military observers to their war colleges. The Galactic Council offered humanity permanent seats on security committees. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of fighting, but capable of restraint, even in victory. And that combination commanded respect. Benjamin Carter returned to Meridian 7 after the war, his enlistment complete. He found his wife already there, working to rebuild the colony's medical facilities. Together they stood at Sophie's memorial, now a beautiful garden with flowers from a dozen different worlds. We did what we had to do, he said quietly. And now we do what Sophie would have wanted, Lauren replied. We rebuild. We welcome back our alien neighbors. We show them that one terrible act doesn't define all of us. The colony voted to establish a school in Sophie's name, one that would specifically welcome students from multiple species. The first graduating class included humans, Norvans, Rill, and even 3 Crithian children whose parents had fled the Empire's collapse. The graduation ceremony was held in the Memorial Garden, and every student placed a flower at Sophie's statue. President Warren attended that graduation, standing with the Carter family as young voices sang in multiple languages. She never got to grow up, the president said softly. But maybe her memory will help the galaxy grow up instead. Years later, a Crithian historian named Kelmesh would write the definitive account of the war. His book, titled The Price of Innocence, became required reading in schools across 40 species. In the conclusion, he wrote, The Crithian Empire fell not because humanity was stronger, but because we chose a path that made strength our only defense. We killed a child who showed us mercy, and learned too late that some species remember such things forever. The Sophie Carter Memorial Accord remained in force for decades, preventing conflicts and saving countless lives. Human military academies taught courses on proportional response, using the war as a case study. Krithian children learned about Commander Vexlar's crime and the catastrophe it unleashed. And across the galaxy, military commanders thought twice before authorizing strikes that might harm civilians in the Memorial Garden on Meridian.